but trying to understand why you failed is probably the best thing, one thing you can do in each rejection. But I would have to caveat that by saying, if we know things about statistics, we know that it's never a great idea just to make a conclusion just on one specific sample point unless it was super obvious, right? So if you can't, if you got rejected, but you still can't really figure out why, it would be a good idea to just make a couple of guesses, but
What's going on, everybody? Hey, my name is Andy, and welcome to that one interesting podcast.
Perfect. They do got trust issues.
Why you say that?
I'm not working on nothing. I ain't your daddy.
What is your purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing?
She gotta be least thick. That's an awesome name. High five.
High five for what?
High five.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the 42nd episode of that one interesting podcast. And today's topic is overcoming the fear of rejection. And as usual, we usually have a special guest with us. And at this time, I would like to give our special guest for this episode a short time right now to introduce himself and tell us more about what he does.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Tak Mehta. I am an upcoming author of the book called End the Box to Box Cycle, a manual for creating a rewarding social life. Essentially, just the whole point of the book is to help people, overcome like the struggles of loneliness and all the problems that come with it, especially in the Western world, how, a lot of us do suffer from that, unfortunately, and just to create an overall holistic guide to self-improvement that allows people to overcome that, improve their social skills, and create connections that fulfill them. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for taking the time to hop on the podcast. To start each of our episode, I usually ask, my guests on what made you decide to hop in the field that you are in.
For sure. So basically, I think, so when it comes to writing a book, I think writing a book isn't something I've always thought about, but solving problems definitely was. And when I was working a full-time job, I was basically just going to work. I had a good job. I liked it, but I was going to work, going home, going to work, going home, and just kind of living that lifestyle. Like, of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but just the feelings of, I wasn't able to create a lot of social connections and just have a fun, rewarding social life there. So I realized that was a problem, at least for myself. And it's not like I suffer from a lot of like social anxiety or anything like that. I think I was pretty good there, but for some reason I just couldn't, bring myself to just make great friends and stuff. So I think, and then when I was looking on the internet, looking at a lot of scientific facts, I realized that problem is actually a lot more common than you think. Like 3 out of 5 Americans self-report feeling lonely. Obviously, the numbers are a lot higher for younger millennials, especially younger men. What we know about science, science has shown that the number one strongest link to lifelong happiness is social relationships. So I just realized that's not a problem so common to just me. So I decided to write a good book about it in order to help a lot of other people who seem to be going through something similar.
When is this book's already out, or are you in the process of writing the book?
For sure. So I'm in the process of it right now. I aim to have it available, I would say, early to mid next year.
Okay. So how can someone goes about, if they want to read the book, where they can go about following you to stay up to date
Absolutely.
on when it's released?
For sure. So I do have a small preview of my manuscript available at takmeda.com/subscribe. So my name is spelled takmeda.com/subscribe. And then from there, they can enter their information and then they can download a free preview and also keep in touch too, because I will be giving updates on how the editing process is going, how's the launching process going, and where they can get it once it comes out.
Awesome. So Tag, how long have you been in this field?
Let's see. I think I've extensively studied, psychology, self-improvement, all that type of stuff for, I would say, 3 to 4 years. I wouldn't say a super lifelong learner or anything like that, but I'm definitely well versed to a lot of the intricacies, especially because I had to use it in my life to help improve my situation.
You wouldn't mind sharing your situation and how like did you use it in your life?
Absolutely. What specifically? The fear of rejection, or um,
Uh, I'll lean toward the fear of rejection since that's the main topic of this episode.
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. So fear of rejection. Honestly, a lot of things I've done in my life have been things that I've had to face rejection in. So, like starting out in my job, for example, like my job, my first professional job, my first two professional jobs were actually a sales development rep for two local startups. So that basically involved a lot of cold calls, a lot of cold emails, a lot of cold outreach, and you could honestly imagine how much rejection you feel from that. You get from
Mhm.
that. Uh, Also, when it comes to social life as well, being the one to take initiative to go out, meet people, make friends, a lot of rejection has to come out of that as well, or it could potentially come out of that. And of course, trying to meet girls as well, same idea. A lot of
Mhm.
rejection could come as a possible side effect. So I think just putting all three together, and of course a lot of other things people do in their lives, you have to be able to be well versed in understanding rejection, how to deal with it in order to um, make sure you don't, I guess, like succumb to all the pressures and problems, and make sure you achieve your goals.
Yes, of course. So how did you go about dealing with rejection?
For sure. So basically, before, so like when I started understanding it, it really became clear. I think the first thing that I had to do, or I ended up doing, just to get myself on the right track, and of course this is something that your audience can do as well, is first we got to understand what the fear of rejection really is, and that just comes from human instincts. So basically, everything we have, like everything we do, it's not by accident, right? And fear of
Mhm.
rejection, same idea. So basically, the reason why fear of rejection comes as a result is because of human instincts. Basically, when your instincts were formed back like way back in the primal caveman days, and of course we had our own tribes there. So when you got rejected by other people, it's either your status was getting lowered or you were actually kicked out of your tribe, and that's essentially was pretty much a death sentence. So that's why the instincts are there. Of course, times have changed, but human nature really hasn't, because it takes hundreds of thousands of years to make even small adjustments in our evolution. So that's why we are afraid of rejection to this day. So we do have to understand, just because it is human instincts, it's hardwired in us. It's impossible to get rid of. Now, the basically the way that I've started to really help
If
myself with the fear of rejection.
if I
Yeah,
could rephrase that question, is not how did
go
you
for it.
deal with rejection? I would say how did you go about embracing rejection? Because we can't get rid of it. It always gonna be
No,
there. You're always gonna have that no, that one no. So the perfect question I would ask you is how did you go about embracing rejection?
mhm. So basically, you have to become comfortable enough with rejection in order to do it. uh, and it obviously depends on the context, of course. Like, being unafraid, being less afraid of rejection and cold calling doesn't necessarily translate to being unafraid of rejection in asking somebody out or talking to a pretty girl, or in a business situation. So basically, the best way to go about it was to become comfortable enough to do it, but comfortable enough to do it, but understand that it's pretty much impossible to get rid of, and that just comes from progressive progressive desensitization. So basically, it's slow incremental exposure. I think trying your best to do it, to take on as much rejection as quickly as possible, that definitely isn't a great recipe for um, making sure you psychologically adapt to it. So doing it in baby steps, and just understanding that um, the whole point of it is to become comfortable with the fear and do it anyway. And once you get to that point, then the actions and the positive reference points you get from success all basically come in line.
The key word you said was become comfortable with the fear. So
Yes.
what ways can someone goes about, getting comfortable with that type of fear?
Mhm. Absolutely. So basically, the best psychological concept you can use is just is progressive desensitization. Start small. So like have your end goal, keep your end goal in mind, and the goal that you can achieve through the end, but break it down into smaller steps, and then and work your way up. So let's just say, for example, let's just say you want to have the end goal of being able to walk up to anyone you want in the world and start a conversation with them. If
Hmm.
you've never done that before, that's probably among the scariest things you can do in your social life. So just doing that tomorrow isn't a great idea. So what can you do? If you can break it down to 3 to 5 small progressive steps, that'd be the best way to go about it. And remember, each step along the way, you're basically thinking to yourself, you're not trying to get rid of the fear. You're just trying to become comfortable enough with your fear to do it, right? So if you were to break that down to 3 to 5 steps, it would be maybe step one, practice in front of a mirror and say what you're going to say, but just say it to yourself in the mirror. Step two,
Hmm.
do it with family or friends, like very safe people, people that you know for a fact they pretty much won't ever make fun of you or insult you or react negatively. Step three
Hmm.
could be start with very low risk people that that you don't know. So same idea as the friends and family, just people you don't know. So waiters, cashiers, baristas at the coffee store, and then next you can start doing it with people that you want to talk to, but have never met. But from there, it still wouldn't make sense to try to hit your end goal. I would say then the best idea would probably be just focus on starting the conversation. Don't worry about you know getting a phone number. Don't worry about having a great conversation. Don't worry about carrying the conversation. Just the fact that you started it should be a goal enough. And then from there, I think you can finally achieve your end goal. Something like that, taking it step by step, not worrying about doing the end goal tomorrow or next time. I think doing it progressively is probably the best way to go about it.
What would you say? What would you say caused someone, to fear rejection?
Mhm. Sure. So, of course, aside from the fact that it is natural human instinct, I think another one too is basically how this brain works and how they perceive themselves. So, basically, if we think about it, sometimes as humans we think that we're very rational humans. Unfortunately, of course, what we know from psychology, that's not the truth. Um, we think that we have this hypothesis, then we create find evidence that helps us or creates counter arguments, and then we come to a logical conclusion. Fortunately, that's not the case. We have an emotional pre-existing conclusion, and then we find evidence that um, supports it, which is called confirmation bias. So where that plays in with rejection is that if you're overly afraid of rejection. Once again, it's everybody's afraid of rejection, but if you're overly afraid of rejection to the point where you cannot do the actual action in and of itself, this is essentially what's kind of going on. Your your pre-existing conclusions like, okay, you're not great or you suck or I don't like myself or something like that. And then when you get rejected, that essentially plays as evidence that supports your pre-existing condition, whether
Hmm.
um, but then someone who has a positive frame of mind or someone who has positive reference points that is confident enough in themselves because they had previous demonstrated experience, their pre-existing condition, at least in that context, is I'm confident, I can do it, I like myself, something like that. And then when they do get rejected, it doesn't necessarily mess with their brain as much, um, just because it doesn't confirm their pre-existing conclusion that they have from themselves. So definitely, that's why progressive desensitization, building up, is so important because there's not. I don't think there's anything noble in getting rejected. Like, of course, you know. Sometimes we can rationalize to ourselves, like, something better will come tomorrow, or, oh, it's their fault or something. But there's nothing noble about it.
I,
There's noble. Yeah.
I'll say like when someone going through something or going through
Mhm.
a process that you might get rejected is, I say you gotta have a
Right.
plan B. think both sides. Don't think you always gonna get yes at everything that you aim at.
Oh, absolutely.
You gotta think
Mhm,
like, oh yeah, what will happen if I get a no? There's
mhm.
tomorrow. Getting a no is
Yeah,
not the end of the world. Getting a no is
exactly.
basically finding something that you might
Mhm.
not know about before that you can learn and go back and practice and get better at that. Then you can go back again and try again until you get that yes.
Exactly. And exactly that's where the confidence comes from.
Mhm.
Yeses, like the successes, the yeses. Even if they're small successes, that's where the confidence comes from. But you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Um, Definitely learning from the experiences in order to get successes, even if they're small successes. That's basically how confidence is built, and that's why working your way up through progressive desensitization is so important.
Exactly, exactly. Do you know what type of psychology, like psychologically, how can how does rejection affect a person mentally?
Uh, let's see. I don't necessarily. I wouldn't be able to give you a super psychological answer to that. But
Yes.
yeah, of course it. Of course it. If okay,
I know
so
one
basically,
thing it lowered their confidence and stuff, but what's some
yeah,
other example you can give us?
basically like it lowers confidence in their ability to continue if they keep like if they either stop or
Mhm.
continue to get rejection, right? So like I said, there has to be, of course, when you first start out there is going to be more failures than there are successes, but the ratio of success to failure cannot be like astronomically different, right? So that's why, like, going out and getting rejected 50 times a day in order to make yourself like desensitized to it, that doesn't work, just because all that rejection does take a toll on your mind. Like I said, because it's instincts, right? It has to take a toll on your mind, lower your
Yes.
confidence, or even lower your perception of your skills. Like yours, because rejection is such a, it has so many variables to it, right? It could be your fault, it could be their fault, it could be the um, situation, and each of those has so many variables to it. It could definitely lower your perception of your own skills, even though your skills could be relatively well. That's just one example I can think of. But
Mhm.
confidence in not only that context that you got rejected in, but even in all other contexts as well, for sure.
Unconfidence, like if someone listening to this podcast right now that has been rejected so many times and it lowered their confidence, like what would you tell that person that's listening right now?
Absolutely. So one thing I would say, that's why I've been mentioning that rejection, like overcoming, like rejection, is very contextual, right? So it really depends on what context people are trying to overcome the rejection or achieve a goal in. So, for example, let's see. Do you have any common context that your listeners usually give you? Like, is it at work,
Uh,
or is it with girls, or with just dating, or was it with
I'm I'm a,
friends, or
I'm a, I'm gonna touch the dating part later on this episode, but
sure?
let's focus on right now on someone that has, on self improvement, like
Sure.
someone that trying to thrive and be successful, but everywhere that they goes and trying to find an answer, they keep on getting no, and that
Okay.
lowers their confidence. Like, what would you tell
Right.
that person?
Sure. So if I can be a bit more specific, if I can create more a specific scenario, just so I can give a more specific answer, I think that would definitely help a lot. Let's just say it's business, right? Let's just say somebody
Yes, yes.
gets, yeah,
Let
sure.
let's
So let's
let's
just say
use
some,
let's use what you say earlier. You doing a lot of call for startups and stuff. Like, let's use that
absolutely,
example. That would be a
sure.
great
Let's do.
example.
Sure. So basically, if I'm making all these calls all these days and I'm getting rejected more a lot of times, and I'm only getting successes sometimes, continuing to go down that same pattern wouldn't help anyone. It wouldn't help me. It wouldn't help the business. It wouldn't help the even the customers too. So basically, you got to basically rejection pretty much just comes from a failure to execute properly, right? Of course, given the other circumstances, of course. But so basically, what I would do, I would tell that person or myself to step back and just understand what it takes to succeed from a logical level. So basically, what that means is understand why things happen, right? So go into the why something will succeed. So going back to the cold calling situation, why, if I call a customer right now, they've never heard of me, what would get them to buy or book a demo or something? That's the success. What would it take to get that in a logical way? So in that case, it would be okay. I if I established my company's product, and if I found a good match for their company's needs, then they will be. And if I address reject or if I address objections that they may have, that is how I would succeed in that cold call, and I would practice that. And then that way you actually have a blueprint for success, which is of course to get a sale or to get a booking. And then from there, then you can start getting back on the calls and then understanding where you're going wrong, making adjustments. As long as you know the blueprint it takes to actually succeed, like um, logical process.
What would you
And I
say?
would,
What would you say? The key point that someone should get from being rejected.
from being rejected, I would
Like,
say,
what is that one thing that's the most important thing that you should not be you should not miss when it comes to being rejected that could help you get better
mhm,
afterwards.
absolutely. I would say try your best to figure out why it happened. Now, right? Because rejection happened for a reason. It might not be your fault. Like I said, it could be your fault, it could be their fault, or it can be the fault of the circumstance. But trying to understand why you failed is probably the best thing, one thing you can do in each rejection. But I would have to caveat that by saying, if we know things about statistics, we know that it's never a great idea just to make a conclusion just on one specific sample point unless it was super obvious, right? So if you got rejected but you still can't really figure out why, it would be a good idea to just make a couple of guesses, but not come to any conclusions unless you absolutely can. But the whole point would just be to use use the reasons why just to create a better understanding of the logical process it takes to succeed, so you can do that in the future.
Were you hard on yourself when you first started working at the job where you had to call uh people? Were you hard on yourself
Yeah,
when you kept getting
I
no's?
was I was so when I first started, I was pretty hard on myself just because in my mind, I had an idea of what a good salesperson was and what I was, and
Mm-hmm.
this was like based out of no reality. It was just all just like figments of my imagination. So I kind of had this expectation of what a good salesperson's supposed to be, and obviously,
Yeah.
knowing me starting out, I was nothing like that. But I think just the reassurance of the great head of sales I had, the great CEO I had, like I think they put me down to reality real quick. Just explain more in reality terms, like no, this is your expectations. You're doing fine, and of course
So
you could.
based on the information that they gave you, how did you go about prepping up yourself for
Of course.
rejection?
So, oh yeah, for rejection. So just basically knowing just knowing how to handle it better, knowing how to handle the various objections that are going to come your way. And also another thing too is just to stay, just I know this sounds super cheesy, but just to try to stay positive the whole time. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you get rejected, like if someone on the phone rejects you, hey, sorry, I can't buy your product today. Sounds good. Thank you so much for taking my call. Have a great day. At least that way, you're not like you'll never come out of a call beating yourself up or being in a negative mindset, even if the rejection hurts, just because at least you didn't make their day worse, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
that.
So
But also,
how do you see rejection now based on that experience?
yeah. So basically, I just see rejection as um, a mismatch of circumstances. Unless I did something completely wrong, like make the insult the other person, which obviously I would never do. It's
Yeah.
basically just a mismatch, and like now this one's actually not just in all contexts. Rejections are just mismatches, right? If I call a company, and I explain the value propositions, um, try to understand their company's needs, and they say, "Oh no, we actually don't have that problem." So I think we're okay. We're going to pass.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that's not a reflection on me or a reflection on anything I've done. It's just a mismatch of circumstances, and maybe in a different circumstance they might accept. So I think I've stopped taking rejection as personally. So that's definitely
Exactly.
helped. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, one of the thing that's so weird is that people reject other things, but it's hard for them to take rejections.
Hmm. Yeah.
They might
That I mean
say
that's
no so easily because they don't like that type of thing or they don't like that person. But yet, if
Mhm.
that happens to them, they go crazy.
Exactly. Honestly, that's also another great way to looking at it too. It's like if you were in that position, would you reject yourself? Like
Hmm.
that's another good question you can ask to help learn and help understand the logical process. Which is that's a great point. That's a great point you brought up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy. But a lot of people never seen it that way though.
That is
But
true. Hey, and that's why
hey,
they listen to your podcast, Andy, because you bring those.
you know, one of the most common rejection that people will talk about is dating. You know, some
Yes.
people are scared to ask that
Mhm.
one person to go on a date because they scared of get rejected.
Yep.
Uh, uh, uh. So, in what ways can someone go about, you know, overcoming that fear?
For sure. So basically, so there's essentially kind of two things. There's like rejection, like just the rejection in and of itself, but also the rejection of you, right? So no matter what point you get to, I think a part of us is always going to be a little bit afraid every time, we send a text, hey, will you go out with me? Or we approached a pretty guy or girl on the street. But I think a lot of the fear has to do with like rejection, like the fact that they're rejecting you. So I would say pretty much do your best to become a guy or become a girl that that is desirable, at least in that dating context, right? So I actually have a great book recommendation for if any guys are listening in the audience and they're afraid of rejection in terms of dating or they want to improve their dating lives. There's a book called What Women Want by Tucker Max and Dr. Jeffrey Miller. It's probably like it's the most non BS dating advice book I've ever read. It basically like in a very simple, easy to read way, it scientifically breaks down how to
Hmm.
become a man that women biologically want. And I think if you do that and follow the steps in that, right, it's like very simple stuff. Take
Does
care of your
that
health.
does,
Yeah.
does that book help? Because sometimes women can be very difficult.
Oh, absolutely. That book essentially is just in the. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
In that book, that book's basically it's more about like you as a man. Like it's like
Okay.
independent of all women, right? So
Okay.
it's like basically like Tucker Max is someone who's very famous in the dating space, but Dr. Jeffrey Miller is like one of the world's leading evolutionary psychologists. So put both of them together, you get a
Hmm.
really simple to read book that's very scientifically researched. It's amazing. It's hilarious too. It's amazing. But yeah, but you get a lot of things like take care of your health, become stronger, take care of your appearance, learn how to conversate with women. What else? How like why, and it also explains exactly why these things are relevant, right? Like develop all six types of intelligences and all these things, and after you do that, you start becoming confident in who you are,
Hmm.
and then you become a person who's less likely to get rejected. And then from there it just becomes a process of exposing yourself to rejection once again incrementally, um, understanding why things you get rejected certain times and trying to create your own blueprint, I guess, for dating success. But yeah,
Did that book help you out a lot?
I'm definitely still working on my dating life, but I would say I've made a lot of changes from who I was many years ago for sure.
All right. So you say getting used to rejection. How does that process goes about, like from the beginning to now?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm getting used to rejection. It's sorry. I think a better way to reword that is, um, or I don't. Sorry, that's a little I may have been a bit misleading with that. It's like it's once again getting rejected all the time doesn't necessarily set you up for success. Now, what does set you up for success is if you get rejected, you figure out what you need to do in order to succeed. Um, you start experiencing even small successes, so you have positive reference points. Um, and then if you're in a place where you're getting a healthy balance of you know failures and successes, then the failures don't necessarily hurt you as badly just because, or affect you as badly just because you do have positive reference points you can um, compare and contrast to. So, like I said, I think if I were to summarize this entire podcast episode in one sentence, it would just be use rejection to understand how to succeed, like the logical reasoning, because everything to succeed, everything in success in any context
Mm-hmm.
has a logical process to success, like a logical why, a reasoning to it, right?
You
It's
know, you know,
a lot of things.
how I would say,
Go ahead.
you say there's a logical why, and sometimes
Yeah,
that why can be hard to find out. Like, how can someone go about finding out why it happened when
yeah.
something
So
happened?
for sure, theoretical knowledge and experiential knowledge. I don't think doing one or doing the other is going to help. I think doing a mixture of them would help, right? So let's just say, go back to dating or go back to cold calling, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If I just stayed at home and studied cold calling books, sales books, YouTube books, I would have a good theoretical understanding of what it takes to succeed in a cold call.
Mm-hmm.
But then, but then if the minute I get on a call, I might freeze up and I might not do well. Now, if I just spent the entire day, all my life, just cold calling and not learning about any of the theory or the books or anything like that, I might just never get to a point where I understand different logical perspectives that allow me to make different changes. So I do
Mm-hmm.
need to do both. Now, both of them do have their obviously have their pros, right? Like one thing with experiential knowledge is allows you to emotionally calibrate. So it allows you to understand your emotions and just the subtle nuances in how to act. But then the logical theory allows you to get different logic perspectives from people who are probably way smarter than I'll ever be in the topic, and then use that to um, create a roadmap for success. So I would
Mm-hmm.
just say learn in all different in as many different ways, grab as many different perspectives, try a lot of things, and just learn.
Exactly. Do you take being rejected personal?
Um, I think I think not as much, but in some circumstances for sure. I think I've gotten good at analyzing, having a good grasp of why I got rejected in certain circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I do need to take it personally, then I will. But it really just depends on it depends on the specific instance. But for the most part, I think I'm more able to brush off rejection as like a mismatch in circumstances. Now, if let's just say, like I don't know, I was talking to a girl for a very long time and she
Mm-hmm.
got to know me and then she rejected me, then you have no choice to you have no other choice than to take it personally, because I don't think there was any other circumstances it could be, right? So it
Do you
depends on
mean
the
like
situation.
talking in a way that she knows that you are interested in her, or talking in as a friend that she have no clue that you are interested in her?
I would say interested in the way you're interested, because at least I think if you can overcome the fear of rejection to a point where you can be courageous enough to show and to talk to her in a way that isn't
Mhm.
just friends, then you're kind of becoming more vulnerable. You're setting up for yourself for success, but you're also opening yourself up to failure. So yeah,
How can someone go about embracing that failure?
embracing that failure. Yikes.
Yeah, if you
Very
end up,
hard
yeah, if you was talking with someone
for
and
sure.
you show that you were interested in her to be more than friends, and she end up
Yeah.
rejecting you, how can someone go about embracing that failure, that
First of
rejection?
all,
I would say.
first of all, just understand that that's a part of life. Like it's going to happen. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people as well, and it's going to happen, like regardless. And then
How
from
do you
there,
handle that?
Sorry.
I
Oh,
say, how
uh,
did you handle that? You say it happens to you.
yes, yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, the way that I handle it personally, the best way is to not suppress your emotions. Like if you're going to be angry, if you're going to, if you're gonna want to cry or something, like just do it. Like get it over
Hmm.
with. Like feel what you feel, even if it takes a day or two. Feel what you feel. Like literally, all right, if I'm super into a girl and I get rejected, like I'm on edge. Like I'm pretty pissed. The day after, like I can literally predict these things. Like if a girl told me, hey, I'm gonna reject you on Thursday, I'd be like, all right, sounds good. On Friday, I'm gonna be pissed for the whole day. But that's the thing. It's just like emotions are a part of life. All emotions are a part of life. Like it wouldn't make sense to try to suppress it, like try to blame her or try to blame something on the Friday. Just feel it, and then by Saturday, like going back to working on yourself, like I said, like working on the things that will create a logical, like create the blueprint for success the next time. Yeah.
Hmm. Figure out a way to understand that rejection is a part of life, and at the
Mhm.
same time, know how to release your emotion when there's those certain things happen.
Exactly. Or a better way to say that last part is not get in your own way when you have emotions.
So, what is
Yeah,
the best way? I'm trying to be more positive.
sure.
Sometimes we can release our emotion in certain negative ways. Like, what's the best way can someone goes about trying to release those bad, angry emotion in a
Right.
positive way?
Gotcha. So I think I think anything that you can do in private that is not destructive to yourself or others, I think that's overall a healthy way. If you need to talk to someone about it, absolutely, like 100% talk to someone. I've talked to psychologists and mental health workers all the time. I've talked to my friends all the time. But most of the time, I do try to process it myself. Doing it just in private, and doing it in a non-destructive way. I think once you give yourself that kind of like those rules to play in, then you just allow yourself to feel whatever you feel. If you
Hmm.
feel angry, if you feel mad, if you feel disappointed in yourself, it happens. But then again, sorry,
Go ahead.
being, you can feel sad, but you can't feel, but don't feel sad for yourself, right? So
Mhm.
if you feel those emotions, go for it. But one thing that you cannot allow yourself to do is play the victim mentality, because as soon as you do that, the logical blueprint to success goes down the window, because you will never be able to get to a point where you um, are able to take the steps and learn the steps and to succeed, right? So if I can
Do you
summarize
think?
all the things.
Yeah. Do you think you ever find a way to ease out those emotions, like to accept that if you're going through the same scenario more than
Yeah.
once, like do you think you'll find a ways to ease out those emotions and not feel the same way as you felt before?
hmm for emotion, for that in the moment emotions, I would just stick to feeling how you feel, just in a very healthy way. But I
Hmm.
think part of that is also like the lingering, I guess, what you feel on a lingering basis kind of depends on what do you see for your future, right? Like, you can do you reasonably expect to succeed in the future, right? So if, let's just say, a girl turns me down or something like that, do I reasonably expect in the future that I will succeed? And then once again, that's where the whole understanding the logic comes from. Understanding the logic to success comes from, because um, you have to understand that if you follow a certain path, a logical path, and you can succeed in the future, even though you're not succeeding now, then that helps brighten your mood, get you motivated, start allowing you to do the things required. But
Hmm.
so it really just I think it comes down to what's your outlook, and do you reasonably expect you can succeed in the
Exactly.
future.
Exactly. And one thing I would like to say is when it comes to dating and rejections,
Hmm.
and one thing I'll say is, instead of asking one out, maybe try to ask 10 out. One of them will say yes. So maybe your
Maybe.
chance will be higher than the probably the yeses will balance the no out. So
Yeah, I mean, I
that
think
can
that's
work
also a
out
big
good.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also a big reason why it's important to work on yourself, because then once you do that, then you can start I guess using rejection, or using asking people out as kind of a filter for how interested they are in, right?
Hmm.
And then accept and go enjoy your time with the ones that are also receptive towards you. So yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Exactly. To close out this episode, like what are some general steps could you give out to our listeners, to overcome the fear of rejections?
Sure. I think, um, just so I don't overcomplicate your listeners too much, just I would say one thing you can take away from this is do everything in your power to understand what it takes logically to succeed. If you do that, then I think the experience, the struggles, the small wins all come in line, as long as you understand logically
Hmm.
what it takes to succeed. That comes from learning from people who are way smarter than you, or who have done it before, because every situation, you're never the first one to do it, right? Like
Hmm.
dating, getting rejected. How many YouTubers or bloggers or podcasters such as yourself and other people can you listen to that have gone through this? And so just do your best to understand what it takes logically to succeed.
Yeah, one last thing I would add is don't take it personal. It's a part of life. You can
Yes,
get the yeses, the nos. Just make sure that when you get the nos, just learn from it and keep pushing.
absolutely.
Making mistake is not it's not it's not failing.
No,
Making
not at all.
mistake is basically learning something that you didn't know about yourself before. So you just
Exactly. As
learn
long as
something
you're
new.
open.
Yeah, exactly. So you just learned something new that you didn't know about yourself. Now,
There
take
you go.
that nose and go back home and work on it and make it a yes when you go back out there.
Every no is just a small puzzle piece to the overall logical puzzle.
Exactly. Exactly. But
Awesome.
Tech, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to hop in on the podcast. You know, tell the people where they can go about, finding you, get connected with you, and learn more from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Andy. If anyone wants to connect with me, or wants to have get a preview of my upcoming book, go to tacmeta.com/subscribe, and my Instagram is tac_meta.
There you go. All right, guys. Hopefully, you'll learn something new from this episode. See y'all next time, and we out.